Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Welcome back, everyone. Great to be here with you. Today's episode is 2197, and we are going to be breaking down the connection between COVID and weight gain. Now that we have a full 12 months of statistics from 2021, I want to share with you what the average person affected by lockdowns and COVID actually gained in terms of weight versus what the average person would gain on a yearly basis. Now, I found the average weight gain just as fascinating as the COVID weight gain because it was, in my opinion, higher than I expected it to be. So we're going to break all of the stats down today. Not going to be a long show, not going to be drawn out at all. But what I'd like to do now that, again, I feel we have a lot more information over the past, let's say, 2 years, 18 months to 2 years of what does it mean beyond just overall mortality? Meaning that, okay, we know the survival rate with COVID. We know a lot of the people affected by COVID. And we also know now what some of the longer term symptoms seem to be. And I did a whole show on long COVID or long hauler syndrome. I'm happy to link that up as well with you or on this episode. So actually all the links today will be at stephencabral.com/2197. I'll just make it easy. We can just go to that one site and I'll link up the others. But I also want to do one additional show because it's very fascinating that it does seem that there's even more data now on who is going to be most susceptible to long hauler syndrome, long COVID, post-viral inflammatory syndrome. It goes by a lot of names. I did a show again, like I said, just about 2 weeks ago on that. Definitely check out that show. And then in the next week or two, I'll bring you a follow-up episode on the latest research on the 4 factors that make you the most susceptible to that. But again, what you can also do about it. I don't want to just let you know, okay, here's who's most susceptible, and now you're just going to have to deal with this for the next year, 2 years, 10 years of your life. No, there's always things that you can do about it, and I'm happy to share that as well. But today is on COVID and weight gain, or I think we can really say, because I don't think that COVID causes people to gain weight, that's for sure. I would say it's pretty much just the opposite, since most people, I think, when they have this particular virus, feel nauseous, and they tend to eat less, right? Because the body's far more stressed. They might be sleeping more. They might be resting more. But certainly they're not feeling all that great. And so I don't think the weight gain, of course, comes from that. Now, the weight gain does come from stress, and it comes from worry, and it comes from wanting to eat more comfort foods, as well as the opportunity to do so because most people aren't necessarily going into work as much, or at least they didn't in 2021, and certainly at the end of 2020. But what that leads to then, of course, is the ability to have access to pretty much endless food for most people, which is, I guess, good and bad, right? It's nice to be able to say we don't, again, for the majority of people listen to this podcast, don't have a lot of food shortages. Now, that doesn't go for the entire world. I certainly experienced that firsthand when I was overseas, and how honestly deplorable it is for people to be in those types of conditions. I felt, I felt responsible. I felt terrible for the people that I saw, especially in India, at some of the locations that I was at, and how little they did have, which again, just allows me to try to just do as much as I can, but just feel a lot of gratitude for the blessings that I've been given. And I think that most of us do feel that way. The problem is that a lot of these benefits that we see as being able to have food allows us to then overeat as well. So we've seen that during the pandemic, that alcohol consumption did go up, and that, for very obvious reasons. A lot of people try to palliate their nervousness or anxiety or worry or sleeplessness with alcohol. And they kept alcohol stores open even when a lot of other stores were closed. And so that gave easy access and ability for people to gain access to alcohol. Well, alcohol, as we know, is definitely damaging to the metabolism and certainly lowers the metabolic rate, causes inflammation and a host of other issues besides being empty calories. So that, of course, in and of itself could lead to weight gain. But really what I want to share with you is this, is that COVID itself does not necessarily cause weight gain, but an environment of stress allows you to increase cortisol and stress levels. And when you increase cortisol and stress levels, what happens is you typically start to increase blood sugar levels, you increase insulin levels, because typically insulin follows higher levels of blood sugar. You add more belly fat, which is not advantageous, obviously, for keeping a healthy weight. And that increase in belly fat then leads to heart disease, can lead to heart disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and potentially even cancer. And we've seen that, of course, with waist-to-hip ratios. So your waist-to-hip, I've gone over this before many, many years ago in the Cabral concept, but we can link up that episode as well. So I will link that up to stephencabral.com/2197. The greater the waist-to-hip ratio, meaning the larger your waist in comparison to your hips, the more likely you are for a lot of the main causes of mortality. So again, I'll link that up. I'll link up the statistics. You can do a very simple measurement around your belly button. Use a piece of string or a floppy tape measurer, and then measure around the widest part of the hips with the feet just about 3 inches or so apart. And then you'll simply take the quotient or your divisor. Basically, you're dividing the hips by the waist, and you're coming up with, which again is the quotient, the answer to what you're going to see. And then that's going to give you the ratio for your risk factor. And it's very simple. It's very straightforward, but it works really well. It's one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why typically we see women with less heart disease than men. It's not the only factor, testosterone, other things. Androgens are certainly a factor as well. But what we see here is stress due to lockdowns, due to COVID. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have locked down. I'm not saying this is not a political show. What I am saying is, it is what it is. So we locked down. We were kept in fear. The media was keeping us in constant fear. And I'm not even saying that that's been alleviated to this day, but the truth is that many people are stressed. They were stressed about their family, their family's health. They were stressed about their jobs. They were stressed about the future. They were stressed about everything. And you know what? Rightly so. So I get it. I understand. But it doesn't mitigate the fact that when cortisol levels begin to rise, the body begins to lower metabolic rate. When you lower metabolic rate, it typically slows thyroid. It can, again, with higher levels of cortisol, increase blood sugar. It can lead to more ups and downs in energy, and it can lead to more eating because you're trying to palliate the high stress and cortisol. And a lot of time that's happening when you're sitting on the couch at night after the workday is done and you're watching maybe the evening news, super stressed out. And so you're eating your, popcorn or ice cream or chips or whatever it might be, and maybe even having alcohol. So listen, I get it. I understand. But what I want to do is kind of shed a little bit of light on it and why they're referring to it as the COVID-15. Now, I did a podcast maybe a year ago on the COVID-15, but I wanted to see, does that actually pan out? Like, is the COVID-15 true? And it seems that maybe not. And I want to share those statistics with you. But what I found interesting in the course of my research is that, and this was done looking at 15 million patients at Harvard Health. So this is pretty good. I mean, again, I think it's a pretty good case study looking at 15 million people's weight changes over the course of 1 year. And amazingly, I didn't know this, but the average weight gain every single year for an individual is 2.5 pounds. So I do know that over the holidays, from basically Halloween, or some people like to say Halloween, but really, let's say Thanksgiving to New Year's, is about 6 pounds. So that's normal. But a lot of people will take off maybe 4 of those pounds or so during the new year, right? Their kind of New Year's push. But it seems to be that there's this ongoing aggregate of 2.5 pounds of weight gain every single year. And to me, I found that absolutely fascinating, because that means then, okay, in 5 years, the person weighs 12.5 pounds more. I mean, that's a lot of weight, right? 10 years, that's 20 pounds, another 5 or so. Yeah, I mean, you're looking at 25 pounds or so. I mean, that is a lot of weight gain. But it's like anything. It just slowly creeps up. So 2.5 pounds a year, no big deal. 5 pounds after 2 years, 3 years, you're at 7.5 pounds, right? And so it just 9 pounds, 4 years, and it just keeps on creeping. That's the amazing thing about it. So what I wanted to share with you is that even though that's the normal of 2.5 pounds of weight gain per year, I can't say, I always say this, that's the average, that's what's most common, but it's not normal. There's nothing normal about gaining 2.5 pounds a year. I have to state that to people because again, I think we're preaching a lot of the wrong things. Like it's okay to continue to add what is adipose tissue, body fat, and that's okay. And the reason why I'm stating this is, again, I understand the sensitivity around the issue, but every pound you gain in weight in terms of body fat, adipose tissue, the more inflammation you're going to have in your body. Most likely a higher levels of cortisol and the higher levels of estrogen in your body. All of these things can be absolutely detrimental to your overall health and longevity. So I just want to be careful that, one, we're sensitive to the topic that there is no one body type. There's no one ideal body type. That's not it at all. But I also want to then be fair with saying that we have to be careful with what we're saying is okay, because if we truly care about a person's health and we don't want them to end up with heart disease, blood pressure, stroke, cancer, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, essentially, then I just want to say that there's no judgment, there's no anything, there's just being healthy. And really, we want to help people with their overall health. So when we looked at this particular Harvard-based study, it showed that 39%, so about 4 out of 10 people gained weight during the pandemic. So not everybody did, but I mean, a lot, right? More than a third, 40%, essentially 39% gained weight during the pandemic. And here were the approximations. So about 27% gained less than 12.5 pounds. So this could be basically a pound up to 12.5 pounds. So that was 27%. 10%, so 20% of all people, though, if we look at that. So it's like, okay, 2.7 out of 10 people gained a little less than, or gained less than 12.5 pounds. 10% of people gained more than 12.5 pounds. How much? Well, somewhere between 12.5 and 27.5 pounds. That's a huge range. I wish they broke that down a little bit more because, okay, gaining 13 pounds versus 25 pounds to me is a massive difference. Let's say the average person weighs 150 pounds. We're looking at, them gaining, 15% of their body weight. More. That's a big, big number to look at. Okay, the last group was they gained 27.5 pounds or more. And that was 2% of the overall population. Now, you'd say, well, it's only 2%. You have to understand that's out of 15 million people. So, if we do the math on that, I'm just going to pull out my calculator here on my phone and I type in 15 million, get my zeros going, and I put in 0.02. All right, that's 300,000 people in this study. 300,000 people, because it makes the number more real, right? Well over 250,000 people gained more than 27.5 pounds. That, to me, is a frightening statistic because when you gain that much weight of not healthy weight, it is absolutely leading to then far greater amounts of inflammation, right? So if it's leading to far greater amounts of inflammation, and we know inflammation is implicated in 90% of all dis-ease in the body, well, we know that all-cause mortality is most likely going up, right? Heart disease, blood pressure, stroke, type 2 diabetes, cancer. But what they don't tell you is that all of that weight gain is also leading to the inability to keep the immune system healthy. So I want to stay on this just for a minute. So we all know that if you don't have the top 4 causes of mortality that I've named multiple times now, you're less susceptible to dying from this particular virus. Okay, by manyfold, right? Manyfold. So when you look at that, if you gain the weight and then you are then more susceptible to dying from this virus, it is keeping you at far greater risk. So it's not just the virus itself that we have to be worried about, it's the stress due to the pandemic and lockdowns itself. Now, if we look at that, we say, okay, so we've got the actual virus, which is a real thing, and it's something that you just have to be aware of, keeping yourself healthy. But then there's also the stress of the pandemic that if you don't take that into account and you gain this type of weight and it leads to then more inflammation in the body or any of these comorbidities, well, then you're more susceptible to actually dying then from the virus. So this is why I do this show. So the Cabral concept is simply dedicated to bringing you topics that maybe aren't mainstream, that maybe your medical doctor isn't talking to you about, but also that have real world implication. I'll never bring up a topic that there's nothing you can do about. The good news is if you gain 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 27.5 pounds, like in this study, you are able to take that weight off though in no more than 3 to 6 months. So I'm not going to say that you need to lose the weight or can lose the weight in a month. That's not necessarily what it's about. But the good news is this, that anyone at any time, when they are ready, because again, I know not everyone is ready. I understand that. I also understand that weight gain is a metabolic issue. It's not just about calories in, calories out for many people. I understand that it's very nuanced. And I understand that there's also emotional-based reasons behind it. So I get that, I understand that, and I want to be sensitive to that issue. But what I do say is when the person is ready, the programs are there to enable an individual to take the weight off that they need to, and then whatever else is needed in order to achieve a healthy weight for them. And again, I've spoken about this before. A healthy weight does not mean that you're super thin. It doesn't mean that you look like one particular body type. It's simply being a healthy weight for you. So my recommendation is this. It's to understand that the stress that we've been living in for the last 2 years can lead to weight gain, and it has for about 4 out of 10 people. And then for over 300,000 people in this study, at least, it led to substantial weight gain, over essentially 27.5 pounds. And that is substantial. And then I'm not even negating 10 pounds for the people who are 27% of the weight gainers. So my recommendation is very simple and it's very straightforward. I don't want people to go on a crash diet. I don't want them to go on a deprivation diet. And I don't want them to do things that would allow then just for a rebounded weight gain in 2 months from now or 3 months from now. Because I don't want them to add more stress to a rain barrel that is already getting filled or is filled and overflowing with stress. So my recommendation is to begin a program that you believe is simply leading to a healthier lifestyle. So if we can help people live a healthier lifestyle and understand why they're eating certain foods and why they're moving their body in the way that they're moving their body, that they should be, then they're most likely going to keep that weight off for life. So you can partake in whatever program or protocol you feel is best for you. I'm going to link up a couple podcasts below because I do recommend that the number one way to start is simply with a functional medicine detox. It's going to teach you about intermittent fasting. It's going to teach you about more plant-based foods. It doesn't mean that you can't eat meat. It doesn't mean that you can't eat fish. I'm not saying that, but it's going to teach you more about plant-based foods and the benefits for high antioxidant foods. It's going to teach you about meal timing. So that's the best place to start. And then after that, it's going to teach you about how to then incorporate a lot of those fundamentals into your lifestyle. Where you decide to take it from there is completely up to you. On the exercise end, if you're not already walking 7,000 to 10,000 steps per day, which is just a little over an hour of walking minimum. And again, that can be split up throughout the day to about an hour and a half or so for the top end. We start there. So we start with walking. We start with a good functional medicine detox, and then you can always progress. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't be doing weight training. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be doing cardio. I'm not saying that you can't do additional things. You can. What I want you to do is start with something that is realistic, that you will see results from, that can motivate you then to take that next step. So hopefully this has been helpful. I would love to be able to answer any questions for you. My team and I are always here to help. The best place to ask questions is right at cabralsupportgroup.com. About 15,000 members from all around the world hang out there and ask questions and give each other support, as well as our health coaches are there. And again, you can always ask me right on YouTube in the comments, or feel free to leave it on Instagram as well. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I appreciate you, and always feel free to share this show with anyone you believe it could help. Take care. Thanks again. Thank you so much for tuning into today's show. And before you go, as a valued listener, I need to make sure that you know about how you can actually get a $50 product completely free this week over at Equalife. It is literally $49.95, the Daily Mushroom Immune Support. It is one of the most powerful mushroom products out there. Here's why. It contains almost 2 grams of mushrooms per serving. That is a large dose. That means you're actually getting clinical dosages of these scientifically proven mushroom-based extracts. Let me share with you what some of them are. You've got reishi blend, which reishi is one of the most powerful mushrooms in and of itself, that it can actually help balance the overall healthy levels of immune system. Chaga, which is used for endurance and stamina, has lion's mane, which is great for the brain and thinking and focus. Cordyceps, which is used for endurance and so much more. Maitake and shiitake, which are actually used for the immune system. Agaricus, great for the brain, great for the cardiovascular system. And turkey tail, which is used for the immune system, circulatory, brain as well. Like I said, this is a very powerful mushroom-based blend. It can be used on a daily basis, and it's honestly as simple as taking 1 capsule at 3 meals or taking 3 capsules all at once, your choice, any meal of the day. It can help with so many immune-related issues and also supporting healthy levels of inflammation, as well as energy and so much more. I'd love for you to check it out. You can head on over to stevencabral.com/shop. Click on the banner and learn more about the daily mushroom immune support. And you can get a free $49.95 bottle on us in all qualifying orders over at stevencabral.com/shop.